Welcome to another edition of Iconic Creators. I'm your host, Baxter Colburn. A very warm welcome to you on this Monday. A big, exciting interview today. Someone that I have been admiring the work that they do and the team that they work with for quite a long time. And when he agreed to do the interview, I was over the moon because I'm excited to really kind of get inside his brain a little bit and ask some questions and hopefully give you, the audience, an opportunity to learn a little bit more as well. It is the Director of Creative for Texas Football. We get to welcome Derek Ochoa to the show today. So Derek, welcome to Iconic Creators, sir.
Thanks, Baxter. Appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to chatting with you.
Absolutely. You're wearing the Texas colors proudly today, I see, for those, for that. A couple of fun things behind you there too. I'm curious. Talk to me about some of those. What are some of the things behind you that you've got? Some footballs.
Yeah, we kind of spent
stuff?
a lot of time here. So bring some stuff from home. Got the kids up top here.
I love that.
Bunch of locker tags and bag tags we've accumulated over the seasons, and some game balls up here for some big wins in our program. And yeah, it's a lot of little knick-knack stuff. I don't have an office space at home.
Sure.
So all the the fun little collectibles or
absolutely, you got to do it.
We collect over our time.
Yeah.
All the credentials are some are up here. So we might as well have them here. Spend a lot of time here and
absolutely
keep the clutter out of the house.
I love it. Let's go back to the beginning here just a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about how you got into videography and just the creative field as a whole.
Yeah, so growing up, I was always a sports fan. Basketball was always my sport, and I just always remember loving the pregame intro videos that they would lead in with the broadcast. I'm a little older. I graduated high school in 2007.
Okay.
So like social media wasn't really a thing back then. This whole sports creative field wasn't a thing really at all until 2014, 2015, it really kind of exploded. So, going through high school and even at the beginning of college, like I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was always kind of fascinated by video production, specifically with sports. Graduated high school and I got my own laptop for college. And that's when I kind of really started to dive into everything, looking for tutorials, and YouTube was still very young,
yes,
but trying to figure out how to work iMovie because that was the free program I had on my laptop.
Oh man. Yep.
Finding sources to download full games, broadcast games, and kind of make my own video and hype reels and things like that. And I went to LSU. I'm from New Orleans, so when I got to LSU in 2007, they won the national championship. So I kind of jumped on and started making my own little fan hype videos, and those started to get some traction on the message boards and Facebook and that kind of stuff. And got a job with one of the recruiting sites in town. Actually, they kind of gave me my first break and was doing some hype videos for them and helping them cover some of the recruits in town in Baton Rouge, in New Orleans area. And then did that for about a year. And then got a DM on YouTube from the director of player personnel at the time for LSU.
Oh, wow.
If I want to come on board in their recruiting department and to be an intern. And, at that time, that wasn't really a thing, right? A couple schools had some recruiting websites, but, Twitter was, maybe 2 years old at that time. Facebook was still, fairly young. You had to have a university email to get, access to Facebook.
Yes.
Still.
Yep. I remember those days. Yep, for sure.
So, just to get in a program that was, as big as LSU, and, obviously I was a fan from growing up, it was huge for me to have, their resources. And, we didn't really have a lot of video resources like today. I was taking stuff from the video board feed and the TV broadcast, but, got to work with them for, 3 years as a student. We made, game highlights, hype videos, and those would go on, the recruiting website that we had at the time. And, that kind of got my start in the sports creative field. Graduated in 2011 from LSU, did that same kind of role as an intern in the recruiting department for about a year after I graduated, basically, working for free. I was commuting back and forth between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, just kind of still doing it because I loved it and didn't really know what the next step was. And, how I got to Texas, my, boss at the time at LSU interviewed for a position at UT within the football program. He actually didn't get it at that time, but during his interview process kind of hyped me up a lot and talked about me and what I was able to do and bring to the table. And then, he moved on to a different role elsewhere. But a couple months later, UT reached out to me and asked me if I would, apply for a position they were creating in the
Okay.
athletic department. So in 2013, I started with Texas Athletics, mostly as a video editor, a lot of in-house stuff and website stuff. But recently just finished my 12th season with Texas, and
Wow. Okay.
kind of moved up the ladder a little bit, added some more job responsibilities, got some new titles. In 2018, moved over specifically into the football building as the director of video production. And then, worked in that spot until 2022. I moved into the creative director chair, and we've been rolling ever since. So my journey is a little different. I feel like a lot of people in the
Yeah.
sports creative kind of hop around a little bit, but, it's a unique story where I've been in one spot, but I feel like I've
Mhm.
learned so much from different people and different departments and different job roles that I've had.
Yeah.
But it's been great being here, and there's no better place to be than UT. So
I love that. Yeah, I think I appreciate you sharing that. That was fascinating to know because, like you said, it's so often I feel like, and the people that I know, and myself included, that did stuff in the sports world for a long time, it was that like you do a little bit here, you do a little bit here, and you're kind of always building, 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 building. But for you to kind of be constant at LSU for a big chunk, and then now constant at Texas for such a long time, right? Like number one, what awesome programs to be around and under during the times that you've been around with them, right? Like, LSU during their national championship times, then obviously Texas has been just a perennial powerhouse as well. So that's clearly, two great spots. And obviously we can also be honest, it's not how it goes for everybody, right? So you've been, very blessed and fortunate to be in some fun, unique situations. And obviously hard work goes a long way, of course, as well. I want to know a little bit from the Texas side of things. You, as the director of creative media, you talk about the amount of work that goes into a game day, right? I'm sure like Saturdays are your NFL Sundays, right? They're your Super Bowls, especially if it's a home game, right? Like you guys are all hands on deck. Talk to me a little bit about what that game day flow is like. Who are you in charge of? What are your responsibilities on game day? Are you shooting? Are you just kind of overseeing? What's that all look like for you?
yeah, game day. I mean, game day is the best day of the year. 12
Yeah,
times
right?
a year, and hopefully you get more. For postseason. But
Yeah.
I always joke about like we'd all do game day for free.
It's
We
true.
get paid.
Yes,
We get
absolutely.
paid to do all the other stuff up in the week with meetings
Yep.
and other work that kind of build up to game day. So yeah, we look forward to it. Our staff, we have a full-time staff of 4 people, including myself. Um, I'm kind of the main video producer, video editor for our social side, and I also do a lot of work for the team for in-house projects that we do, internal videos that we show recruits or, the team in team meetings or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, we have another content creator position that helps out with recruiting video, and then other social projects that, kind of get delegated or they help me out with. And then we have 2 graphic designers that split between social media and recruiting. And then they're also our staff photographers. So between the 4 of us, that's the 4 main core content creators we have on game day.
Okay.
2 videographers and 2 photographers. We kind of, attack everything. We also have a great group of student workers that help us out. During the week, they're working on, video edits, footage requests, or they're doing graphic design work, helping fill out recruiting templates or,
Hmm.
player of the week templates for social. But on game day, they're acting as other photographers and other videographers. So um, from a football standpoint, for a home game, we might have about, you know, 10 or so photo and video creators out there running around, kind of capturing the home game. And
Yeah.
2 of those students, they help with social media coverage, whether it's a mobile video or, helping up in the press box with posting and publishing content. But yeah, during the week, we always kind of just bounce ideas off each other.
Hmm.
It can get a little repetitive throughout the year. So we're always trying to look at
Yep.
different ways to capture a game day. So, every home game, the players arrive at the same time. They do the same walk down the street, the same pregame routine. So,
Yep.
at the beginning of the year, it's great because it's all new, right?
Yeah.
So what do we
New
do?
players, new everything. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So what do we do in game 3, 4, 5, and so on? So we're always kind of
Right.
brainstorming new ways to capture, content. One week we might do like a quick 30-second edit of the players arriving. The next week it might be, a one shot of just one single player,
Yep.
kind of focusing
On
on
the
a
enter.
want to highlight. Same with our pregame routine. How do we want to shoot the team run out entrance this week
Mm.
compared to last week? And what angles
Hmm.
don't we have yet that we might need later down the line?
Yeah.
Um, my office walls here are all whiteboard basically, or at least, an L shaped of my office is
Oh, that's awesome.
whiteboard. So we're writing down ideas, whether it's memes or trending audio, and we might not use it that week, but we have it written down and kind of bookmarked. Like, okay, if this situation arises, all right, we're going to use this meme, or
Hmm.
this is a great training audio that we could use for a slow mo clip if we capture one this week.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of collaboration. We rely on each other, whether it's me pitching ideas or our other full time staff pitching ideas or our students pitching ideas. That's always where we all come together and we're at our best and we're all collaborating. And I might not be able to do like a 3D render or anything, but I might
Hmm.
have an idea I can pitch to our senior designer, Jake
Yeah.
Flint, and he can take it and kind of work with our students and they can do it. Or if I have if Kyle Barkle, our assistant director of creative, has a video angle idea that I never thought of,
Mm.
like perfect, he'll pitch it to me and I'll make sure somebody captures it. So, those guys and our students are just, we're all kind of embedded and, just always thinking about how to attack different games and different views we would like to see, or if we see, other programs or other pro teams do it, how can we
Hmm.
replicate that and make it into something that's our own too. So always keeping an eye and ear out for trending things and just, eye catching things to keep the brand, in front of
Yeah.
everybody.
100%. And it certainly helps when the team's winning, right? That certainly makes things a little bit easier, right? That's, you got to find, fun, unique ways when the energy's high and everything's good,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah. It's
I,
one thing. It's one thing to do it when they're losing, but then to take advantage
right.
of and capitalize on the opportunity we have. And, I think that's something that's, we're very proud of.
Yeah.
It's always kind of hard to measure success from a social standpoint. You can have all these social numbers and metrics.
Yep.
But one thing that, I always kind of gravitated more towards is the account growing. We can
Mm-hmm.
have, Arch Manning is an up and coming superstar in college football
Yeah.
and we have him on our team, right? We can post a photo of Arch and it'll take off. But, is the account really growing from that? It might down the
Yeah.
line when
Maybe.
we start, winning more games. But, last season, our football account on Instagram, had 60% growth, which is something that we really
Wow.
were proud of. And, it wasn't just me, right? It was everyone that,
Right. The whole team. Yeah.
that's how we kind of measured our success. And, to get over that 1 million follower mark on Instagram this year, that was huge for us. And that was a goal going in. So, if our account's still growing and people are staying with us and it's not just
Hmm.
Texas fans, then, I think, that's a mark that we're doing something well. So, I was pretty proud of that.
Yeah. And I rightfully would be. I got to ask, I can see it in the pictures, but I'm curious a little bit on what type of gear you guys run and what is your favorite types of settings to shoot on.
Yeah. So, we have Sony cameras for our, main content stuff. Honestly, we were kind of behind for a little bit when it came to gear. About 2 years ago, we really revamped our equipment and our stuff in our room. So, from day to day standpoint, from a photo standpoint, we're rocking 2 Sony A1s
Mm.
as our main photo bodies, and then for video, we have a FX3 and a FX6.
Mm.
And, we have all the lenses. We have 70-200s, 24 to
Yep.
70s. We have a 300 for photo, a 400 for photo.
Mm.
We'll do a 200 to 600 for video, and we got a couple of wides as well, for the pregame atmosphere stuff or
Yeah.
wide shots of stadium. So that kind of just goes back into the planning too. Like if one game we know we need to get wide shots of the stadium, we're going to send somebody up with the widest lens we have and go capture that. But from a day to day standpoint, and that's kind of the main gear we're going with. For my favorite setup, I like shooting handheld. I just feel a lot more
Mm.
free and able to kind of
Yep.
roam a little bit. I can't sit still in one spot. I'll shoot with our FX6 for our main game action stuff, and I feel like that camera body has a little more like weight to it, so I can
Yeah.
kind of control it a little better, be a little more stable, and
Yep.
get some smooth handheld shots, but not be kind of tied down to a hi hat or a monopod or anything like that. But yeah, I'm usually shooting with either a 70-200, or sometimes I will put the 2 to 6 on there, 200 to 600 on a hi hat, and shoot some more tight close up NFL film stuff. And that's kind of my bread and butter. I love that kind of stuff. The real
Yeah.
tight detail stuff you're not going to see. We're lucky that we do get the broadcast feed and the TV angles and all that stuff. So that allows us to take risk and, shoot some more dramatic ISOs or, focus in on the offensive linemen that don't really get, the TV time, and we can use
Right.
use that kind of stuff later on. So, yeah, we're starting to catch up on the gear aspect of it. So it's been fun playing with all those different combinations and makes game days really fun.
Are you shooting most everything in 60 frames or 120 frames, or where do you stand on that debate? Because I've heard it go a couple different ways. Some people are like, keep it in 24 because it's the nice motion blur. Like I know I hear the arguments on all sides, but you do a lot of slow mo. I'm a sucker for a good slow mo sports clip as well. Talk to me kind of through what that looks like for you.
For us, we're pretty much shooting everything video wise in 120 frames, at 4K. Luckily with the FX6, it has a built-in ND filter, so you're able to kind of compensate the sunlight there. But
That's so
otherwise,
nice.
we're just cranking the shutter. And I think with football, it is such a fast-paced sport. It's things are happening very quickly, and to be able to slow it down and really show the athleticism or a cut or a big hit or a tight spiral on the football, having
Yep.
that frame rate. We're not going to use it every time, every single clip, but to be able to switch up the pacing or put emphasis on a certain play, that's huge to have that 120 frame rate. So all of our base sequences, we're doing stuff in 24 frames per second. But when we're actually capturing the footage, we're shooting at 120.
That. How much of an emphasis do you feel? I feel like if I have a 70 to 200 on, I sometimes get a little zoom happy. How often do you just stick it at 70 or 200, or just pick your focal length and say, nope, I'm staying here because I don't want to be the doot, 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 right as you're going along as the play's happening? Where do you stand with that? Because you typically are in the back of the end zone or the side, kind of the back of the end zone, it looks like from a lot of your spots. So where do you stand on some of that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it just kind of depends on the time and place, right? If I'm
Mm-hmm.
in the back of the end zone and if I'm anticipating a throw, like it's more of a feel thing. Like if as soon as that ball let go, I might pop out
Yep.
as soon as I see the ball come out, so I know it can't go any further. And then I'm adjusting the focus and making sure I'm
Mm-hmm.
squared away on focus when it's coming towards me. If I'm shooting, down the sideline, if I'm more focused on ISO stuff, then I'll just kind of stay at that same focal length. Um, but I think it's kind of like a make or break in the moment decision, right? How you going to attack it. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
hard to say, but I think as long as you know what you're looking for in that
Yeah.
shot, what you do one play is not going to be the same thing you do the next. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I might be ISOing on a wide receiver one time, so I'm going to keep that same focal length or that same zoom length and
Mm-hmm.
have them running towards the camera. I'm not going to really pop out. Like I want to get that intense look on their
Right.
face. If
That.
they're
Yep.
running head
Chest up.
on, or if I'm ISOing on feet, kind of picking and choosing how to get different cutaways and tell a story away from the game action because we have plenty of cameras
Mm-hmm.
that are capturing the game action stuff. We want to see the receiver, check in with the quarterback at the line for an audible, or the head coach calling a play, or a linebacker, calling out a blitz. So like that's the kind of stuff that
Yeah.
always gravitated to when watching the old NFL film stuff or even the old NBA film stuff when I was a kid, like
Yes. Yep.
tight close up stuff. So I've always tried to kind of replicate that because that always interests me. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's cool. I hope other people think it's cool too. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what keeps me interested when I'm shooting.
Yeah. Anytime I see you post something, I always watch, and it's almost like it's almost like I don't shoot a ton of sports. I would love to do more, but it's almost like homework for me. I love to watch and be like, okay, like how did he compose that? Or it's you kind of are guessing a little bit in times, like, okay, like that's such a really cool shot, or yeah, it's always fun to learn and see from others what they're doing, and kind of how that progression kind of goes forward. I am curious. You said you've been at Texas for 12 years, right? You've got to have a list, at least I'm sure, of a couple of those athletes that you worked with. Like, man, that was so cool that I got to work with them, or seeing where they're on the NFL now, be like, yeah, like I shot some video with them back in the day. Right? Do you have a couple of those that are kind of your? You don't have to rank them in any specific order, but some of those favorite athletes you've worked with that you're like, gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I remember watching guys like Vince Young and Michael Huff. Like
Yep.
they're older than me, but like I wasn't too far away from them.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Huff is a former Thorpe Award winner for the best defensive back in the country, and he actually is
Yep.
on staff now. So I talk and work with him on a daily basis almost. So that's pretty cool to think. I have guys like Vince Young, Colt McCoy, Derek
Mm-hmm.
Johnson, all these like Texas legends. Like they're in my phone. Like I would never thought
That's crazy.
that'd be something cool. Like if we need someone from Colt, I can text him up and say, hey, we have this project working on. What do you think? Can you help? And you come across all those guys, and they all love Texas, so they're always down to
Yep.
help. But since I've been here, getting to see these guys when they come on their recruiting visits, we're basically with them from that recruiting visit all the way to their NFL draft. A guy like, Bijan Robinson, who's, tearing it up for the Atlanta Falcons now, being here when he did his official visit, photo shoot and video shoot. And, I traveled with him to the NFL draft. that's somebody we had, 3 years to, build a relationship with and work with. And,
Yep.
Now when we see each other on the sideline at a game, if he comes to visit, it's like seeing an old buddy.
Yeah.
It's been, being around these guys. And that's what makes college football so great. You see these guys grow and be, they might come in a little young and immature and they're leaving, mature young men. And, they're grateful for what we do and we're grateful for their help and everything we do. So it's always fun to kind of keep tabs on those guys and just watch them succeed. It's always great.
Yeah. Are you doing anything for the draft this year?
Yeah, we'll see who gets invited. They kind of keep that list a little shorter now these days. They don't want 15 guys hanging out in the green room,
Right.
waiting for their name to be called. But last year, we had a lot of guys watching from home. So we spread out as a creative staff. We kind of game planned. Okay, I'm going to go with this guy. You're going to go with this guy.
Yep.
We'll be there for the first night. For the second round, we're going to go to a whole new group of guys because we had some tips that like, okay, he might go first round or he's going to go first round. So, you guys go there.
Try to be in the right spot. Yep.
Yeah.
Right time.
So kind of game plan that. And with all the info that we were able to, count up, but I'm sure we'll do some same, we have a lot of guys going, potentially, first, second, third round. And then, overall just, we had a record number last year get drafted for UT. So I think we're going to be, pretty close to that number, if not surpass it this year. So we'll be planning for it for sure.
I love that. So obviously Texas, you've been, like you said, 12 years you've been there. Was Texas or the job that you're in right now always the goal? Or is there a dream job that you are still potentially, like if somebody called, right? If an NFL team called tomorrow and said, hey, Derek, same job you've got, but for in Green Bay, the Packers, right? Whatever that looks like, right? Like, is that a yes, absolutely? Or is that I've got a family here. I love what I do, horns till I die, right? Like, what does that look like for you?
I think it all just depends, right? Like there's been other opportunities that have come up my time here, but like I always look back at it, it doesn't make sense for what I want or what I'm doing here now.
Yeah.
When I moved to Texas, I was dating my now wife. So everything that we've done since we've been here has been like us two together.
Yeah.
It's a great city. Now we have 2 kids. We, have roots. We built a house here. And so, like it always just had to make sense. Like, yeah, you could chase money, you can chase titles, but is it going to be a more program rich in Texas, or are they going to have, the resources that you might have here compared to another place, even though this place is offering, more money or something. So, and I've never really had a reason to look elsewhere. So I've always just loved it here. The staff's great. The people are great. The fan base is awesome. You get it from both sides, right? You got the fans that love you, and then you have the fans that hate you. So you get to see
right, always
every other program's, in our comments and replies, just hating on us. So appreciate the engagements on that front. So it's just a great place to be. And never say never, but there might be a job out there. I don't know. It's hard to say if this was always the goal. I just always wanted to be around video and sports, and I think people that have been in this field and they might go elsewhere and try something else, I think they end up missing it, and it's a hard thing to kind of replicate the fast-paced world we live in, and
correct
how different each day can be, but you're still doing the same thing, but it's still unique in its own way. It's hard to kind of explain if you haven't really been in the foxhole in the trenches doing it.
Right, 100%. I have similar but different experience. I went to school for broadcasting, so the sports broadcasting side of it, with being on air, right, is a whole different style of things than what I obviously working from the video side, but similar, right? You get it, like that buzz, that high that I get anytime I broadcast a game or I'm around the game is unmatched by anything, right? And it's such a contagious thing that you're like, I need more of that. So I certainly understand that. Before we let you go, give me a little bit of advice, if you would, for those that are aspiring sports video creators or want to see eventually end up, whether it's in a similar role to you or just, I feel like you've got these high school kids, the technology in general that is at the hands of high school and college kids and students these days compared to what we had when we were that age is insane. And they have the opportunities to shoot, much higher quality things, the editing, all of that. How or what advice would you give to someone that's looking to get into that sports videography or content creation world to make an impact and potentially have some longevity?
Yeah, it's crazy. I was talking to somebody the other day, and like, they have all the tools in the world ready for them. When I was in college or high school, like you had to almost like a car note to pay for, just editing software. Like it was
Yeah.
crazy to
Well,
buy.
you,
Like,
you said iMovie and I shuddered. I was like, oh,
yeah.
I was like, I
So
remember that. I was like, this is the best we've got. I'm like, oh no.
exactly.
I'm like, okay.
So yeah, I mean, all the technology's there, and these guys are, our students are super talented. They're way better than I was
Mm-hmm.
at their age for sure. I would just say like never stop learning.
Yeah.
I would always, kind of pinpoint back, like when I first got here, on looking in the mirror, I feel like I took my foot off the gas a little bit with learning. I wish I would have learned more stuff with either graphic design or, After Effects or things like that. So, we always look for people that are multi-talented. Like you have your bread and butter, but you can, if you're a videographer, you can take photos too, or how to like change a graphic if you needed. So being multi-tooled goes a long way in our industry for sure. But just take in all the knowledge from people around you. Listen. You don't need to always be talking. You can listen and learn at the same time. See the way people handle things in a good way, and also see how people might handle it in a bad way, or things you
Mm.
might not have done or they might have done too. So when you do get in a position of, management or director, like you have that experience of like, oh, I remember so-and-so handled this way. That didn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do it, an opposite way, or, just always kind of asking questions as much as you can. Build your network. I know this is a lot of things, but it all kind of
No,
goes
it's
together.
all so valuable. I appreciate you sharing them all.
Um, you know, Being cordial and polite. Honestly, one thing that kind of bugs me is when I get a DM and it's just, yo, like if you're reaching out for, you know, either a critique or, some
Mm-hmm.
advice or how do I get in your spot, like definitely lead with your best foot forward and keep it professional, even
Correct.
though it's a DM on Instagram.
Yep.
Because I'm, honestly, I probably won't answer that one compared to when it's a little more
Yep.
thought out, and then I know what the question is ahead of time, and what you're looking to ask. So just keep it professional.
Yep.
Always keep learning, and then add to that tool belt as much as you can, especially when you're younger, when
Mm-hmm.
you're not tied down to more job responsibilities or extracurricular stuff that might pop up.
Correct.
So yeah, that would be the two or three things that would really I would try to instill that in our students today.
Yeah, I love that. And I wish we had more time because I would ask you about the family balance, right? Like you can have that's the great part about it when you start off when you're young, because as soon as you throw a wife or a husband or kids into the mix, and suddenly it's like, okay, wait a minute. Like I also need to go be a good husband and a good,
Yeah.
parent on top of leading a department in your aspect. So conversations for another time, but there are those other layers, right?
Yeah,
Like do
I
the
would I
work
would
like you mentioned young.
I would say on parenting on itself is hard, regardless of what
Yeah.
job you do.
Yes.
Uh,
Amen.
and so, yeah, you're right. It is a fine line, and I'm lucky here at Texas. They're very supportive, and
That's
when it
right.
comes to family stuff. So another reason why I've been here so long. Make
Mm-hmm.
the important things, and you take time to make sure you're doing the important things.
I love that. That's a great way to wrap things up. Derek, if people want to find out more about you or just follow you and what Texas is doing, what's the best way for people to do that?
Yeah, my Instagram and Twitter handles are the same, or X handle. Derek Ochoa 25, DEREKOCHOA 25. And then follow Texas football. See all the cool stuff we're doing, because I'm really bad at posting on my social media, my personal one, because all my effort goes to that. And
Mm-hmm.
see all the cool stuff our other full timers are doing. Kyle Barkle, Jake Flint, all of our students. Those guys kill it. They're awesome. They make our department what it is. So I'm happy we have them, and definitely check those guys out too, and see what we're doing on there.
Fantastic. Well, Derek, thank you very much for your time today, sir. I was a blast and would love to have another conversation at some point down the road about even more stuff. So thank you
Let's
again
do it.
for being
Let's do
here.
it again. It's been fun.
I appreciate that. A big thank you to Derek Ochoa for joining us on the program today, and a big thank you to you, the listener, as well, for joining us. As a reminder, the show comes out every Monday, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Baxter Colburn. You can find me at Baxter Colburn and at Colburn Creative Co. on Instagram and Facebook. Looking forward to the next episode of Iconic Creators next week. And we appreciate you, as always, joining us. We will see you for another episode on Monday, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for listening.